With me today is Dian Curtis Regan. She is the author of Cam's Quest, which is a young adult novel. Dian has written many books for young people, from picture books right up to young adult books, and has lived in Texas, Oklahoma, Venezuela, and Colorado. Right now you're living in Kansas, and you come down for the Oklahoma Book Awards because Cam's Quest is one of the finalists in the young adult category. Now, this is part of a whole series of books, isn't it?
It's a sequel. There's two, so.
Well, it sounds like there might be more adventures coming.
I hated it, but in the middle of this book, I realized there could be another book. So,
oh dear,
yes,
oh dear.
Good. I got bit.
Right. Well, this is about a young man who actually goes off to find his future by finding his past. It's in the underworld, which there's an outer world which apparently is very similar to what we are living in today. I would imagine that since it is a sequel, that you'd already invented or created this wonderful underworld, so you didn't have to worry about that so much with this one, did you?
Right, but I did get a chance to go back and update the first book, which came out a dozen years ago, which was before computers and email and everything, so I got to go back and update that. So that was the difference. But this came about because I got so many letters from young readers after the first book came out, Princess Nevermore, asking what happened next, asking for a sequel, and I always wanted to write the rest of the story, so I was really inspired to do it because so many readers were asking for it, and I'm very happy that it came about.
Now, is Cam modeled on anybody that you know in the upper world?
Oh, that's an interesting question. They always say that every character in a book is a little bit of the author, whether it's male or female. So, you know, I grew up reading Lloyd Alexander books, and I just loved his main characters who were the young teen boy, kind of awkward and bumbling, and I loved his characters, and I realized as I was writing this, that kind of describes Cam.
He is a young man who thinks he's not a very good wizard because his powers seem to be small, and he finds out there's actually a reason for that pertains really to his past and his future.
Lots of mysteries and lots of twists and turns, and those are the kind of books I like to read. So, I think writers write the books that they wanted to read when they were growing up.
Absolutely. Well, I am always fascinated by an author who can create another world and then do, as you said, all these twists and turns, and I'm sitting there thinking, geez, sometimes I have trouble imagining what I'm going to put in my journal tonight. So, is this something that you have to sit down and really work out, or?
Every author works differently. I knew how it was going to end, but I did not know how I was going to get there. And to me, that's the fun of the creative process, is writing a book like I'm reading it. I keep writing to find out what's going to happen next. And there was one scene when Cam was traveling through the tunnels, because the underground world has tunnels, and the chapter ended with him saying someone was following him. And I went, what? And I thought, I didn't know anyone was following him. How did that happen? And so I started thinking about it and figured out, well, who would be following him and what would the reason be? And it turned out to be a really important part of the book. And it just sometimes, I don't know if it's serendipity or if it's somewhere in there and you just have to find it.
Well, I have interviewed a lot of authors who tell me that the characters tend to take over the story and send it off in a direction.
It's annoying sometimes.
Yes, I've heard that tone of...
You're trying to sleep and they're talking to you, and people think that's weird.
Now, did you have trouble picking up the story after so many years of, I'm sure, writing other books?
I had the first line of the book written for years and years and years before I wrote the rest of it. And so no, I went back and reread the first book to get back into the characters, and it just went from there.
Well, I've found it a very enjoyable sort of coming-of-age book.
You.
And appreciated Cam's, especially his adventures in the upper world, taking a look at what is pretty much our daily lives from such a point
Through
of view.
his eyes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
What a shock that would be to someone from medieval times seeing 2008 and how we live. What a shock that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes actually it's a shock to me when I
Yes, that's a good point.
look at some of it, because things have certainly changed. Well, your first book with Princess Quinn was written, 10, 12 years ago, and yet you had to go back and update it.
Right,
Because,
right.
Because so much
It's
has
actually
changed.
written, I started writing that book when I was just out of high school myself, and so it's a kind of a story I've been writing all of my life. And yeah, and she had just from a 10-year jump in time, so much had changed in the world that it warranted being updated. And I've only had one reader say she preferred the first one, and it wasn't my mother.
Well, I know that is a particular problem for science fiction, but I mean, reading something that was written 20 or 30 years ago, but I have noticed even in reading mysteries and so on, I'll be reading something, well, why didn't they call on their cell? Oh, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Before
Yeah.
cell phones. So, but fortunately, not that much changes in the underworld. I mean, it is not the sort of thing where progress happens every 5 minutes.
Right.
Now, how do you approach writing for young adults in a different manner than you would for a picture book for very young readers?
Yes, it's harder to write the shorter books. It's harder to write. I'm actually editing a picture book right now that will be out next year, and it's just, I think I spend as many hours on a picture book as I do on a novel, because you just have to keep getting the right word in the right order, and streamlined, and working with the illustrations. So that's difficult. And then I have written everything in between. So
Yeah. Well, I am very impressed with anybody who can write for young people, which I'm not embarrassed to admit. Kids scare me. I don't know what to say to them or what would be of interest to them. And I know a 13-year-old has such dramatically different interest than
Right.
a 6-year-old. So I'm impressed that you can do all of that.
well, thank you. I noticed that when I write for older kids, I tend to go into the fantasy world, because contemporary teens scare me too a little bit. So I find it, writing, I have a lot of chapter books, so that's like 4th grade, and I used to teach that age, so I'm right there with the voice at 4th grade. That's easy. And over that, I tend to slip into another world,
Right.
so to speak.
Well, I am hoping that Princess Quinn and Cam live happily ever after and after and after, but I'd also enjoy, I think, a sequel if that does happen.
Well, I thought about the next generation of kids in the book.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
We'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see what happens. You
Well-
never say never.
They'll have to go back and check up on Sarah and her baby and see what's happened.
Absolutely. See, there's the plot right
There you
there.
go. Well, I want to thank you very much,
Well,
Diane,
thank
for
you,
being
BJ.
with us.
Thank you.
Dian Curtis Regan has been here talking with me about Cam's Quest. It is a young adult novel. It is an Oklahoma Book Awards finalist this year. You can find it in your library and your favorite bookstore.